When we think about fast fashion, there are a number of online retailers that come to mind, but one in particular has come under fire for its poor business practices. Shein, the Chinese fashion giant, offers an almost endless stream of trendy style at rock-bottom prices and has risen to dominate the global fast fashion industry over recent years. But behind the addictive scrolling and affordable styles lies the dark side. Today, we'll explore the environmental tolls of its disposable clothing model, the allegations of unfair labor practice that have been made towards the company, and the potential safety hazard and poor quality of goods on offer. We'll also touch on cultural appropriation and size inclusivity concerns as we try to understand the true cause of Shein's rock-bottom prices. But where did Shein came from? And how did it rise to the top of global fast fashion industry so fast? Well, let's find out. Shein was started in 2008 and wasn't the company we know today. It began as a wedding dress reseller. Founder Chris Xu, with a keen eye for the growing online market and a background in search engine optimizations, quickly realized that turning the company into something that could cater to younger demographic was almost a guaranteed success. Shein became the online fashion platform we now know and offered a seemingly endless variety of trendy clothes at prices that no one could believe. Their secret weapon wasn't seeing into the future. It was how agile their process was. Unlike traditional fashion houses with months-long design cycles, Shein worked out how to identify the hottest trends. Then, their vast design team churned out those hot new styles at an extreme pace, with estimates suggesting thousands of new items now hit their online shelves daily. This rapid trend adoption has allowed them to hop on fleeting fashion trends before shoppers even know they exist. Shein doesn't just gamble on these massive production runs that could leave them with mountains of unsold inventory. Instead, they work with a just-in-time manufacturing process. They only produce the clothing in small batches. This minimizes the risk involved and maximize how responsive they can be. They can react quickly to customer trends, pushing out more of what sells and discontinuing unpopular styles before they become dead stock. This strategy, along with how low the prices are, has taken Shein to the forefront of fast fashion, loved by Gen Z. Another thing they do so well is making partnerships with TikTok influencers. Their addictive app and constant stream of new content have turned Shein House into a viral trend on social media platform. Fashionable influencers showcase Shein's latest items, making the trendy clothes at bargain basement prices even more lasted over. Their relationship between Shein and social media has made their dominance in the fast-paced world of online fashion all the more powerful, and this has made them a household name for trend seekers around the world. So that's how Shein get to their dominant position. But what exactly they're doing behind the thing that's so bad? Well, most of the concern that thrown at Shein begins with how bad this company is for the environment. Shein's problem is in its disposable fashion model. Trendy clothes made with cheap synthetic materials are churned out super fast, designed to be worn a few times and then thrown away when it rips or frays. Shein are by no means the only culprits, but the endless cycle of buying cheap throwaway garments actually has a huge environmental cost. The first impact is a massive water footprint that comes with a type of disposable fashion. Textile production is very water intensive, and Shein's high volume model is even worse for the environment than other fast fashion producers. According to a report by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the fashion industry uses roughly 79 billion cubic meters of water each year. That's enough to fill 32 million Olympic-sized swimming pools. Considering Shein's rapid production cycle, estimates say they're a huge part of this staggering water usage. The dyeing process is also environmentally hazardous, especially when it comes to synthetic fabrics, and this often use toxicant chemicals, which always seems to find their way into rivers and our oceans. Then there's the textile waste. Fast fashion's disposable nature creates a culture where it's easy to just throw away your unwanted clothing. Studies suggest that globally, textile waste has nearly doubled since the 1960s. In the US alone, a massive 17 million tons of clothing end up in landfills each year. Shein has a huge part to play in the waste. People get lured in by low prices and passing trends, often buying clothes with the intention of wearing them once and then throwing them in the trash. This constant influx of cheap, low-quality garments into the markets adds more and more to the ever-growing mountain of textile waste sitting in landfills. The environmental cost doesn't stop there. The production of synthetic fabrics like polyester, a mainstay in Shein's clotheslines, contributes heavily to greenhouse gas emission. A 2019 report by Quantis International suggests the fashion industry accounts for 10% of global carbon emissions, exceeding the combined emissions of international flights and maritime shipping. For comparison, that's roughly the same emission as the entire European Union. Let that sink in. Shein's reliance on synthetic material and its high-volume production likely contribute a large amount toward this alarming statistic. Finally, and something that's more recently a hot topic, microplastics. Synthetic fabrics shed tiny plastic fibers during washing, and these eventually end up in our ocean and waterways. These microplastics are then ingested by marine life and then work their way up the food chain, potentially impacting human health as our body become clogged up and plastics we can't absorb or digest. While the exact contribution of Shein's clothing to microplastic pollution is difficult to quantify, the sheer volume of garments produced by the company is enough to cause big concerns. It's not just the environment that people feel Shein is hurting. It turns out they're not really good at taking care of their workforce either. Independent investigation and reports by NGOs have uncovered Shein's use of unfair labor practices, raising serious ethical concerns about human costs behind rock-bottom prices. The main allegation is about excessive working hours. A 2020 report by Public Eye, a Swiss NGO, found evidence of workers in Shein's Guangzhou factory toiling for very long hours, exceeding the Chinese labor laws. Workers reported shifts lasting 12 hours a day, with only 1 day off a month, translating to roughly 75 hours a week. This brutal schedule leaves little room for rest or personal life, leading to massive concerns about worker fatigue and potential safety risk in fast-paced factory environment like Shein has. It's not like the staff are well paid either. Public Eye's report also showed very low pay for the Shein workforce. Some workers were found to be earning as little as 32 cents per hour. This barely meets basic needs, even in China, forcing many to work those excessive hours just to make ends meet. It doesn't stop just there. As if being overworked and underpaid wasn't enough, unsafe working conditions mean you're taking a risk every time you go to work. The same report described the factory with barred windows and lack of emergency exit with potential fire hazard everywhere. Some production even moved to small, non-specialist workshop inside the residential buildings, with concern being noted about structural integrity and basic safety standards. This report shows that Shein has been prioritizing speed and production volume and ultimately profit margins over worker safety and well-being. A 2021 investigation by Channel 4 and the I newspaper in the UK found evidence of workers in China producing garments for Shein and suggested that they were working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, for as little as 2 cents per item produced. The picture starts to look very scary indeed, but there's more. Shein claims to have a code of conduct in place, but there is a vast disconnect between their promises and the reality faced by workers in their supply chain, says Li Qiang, a researcher with China Labor Watch, an NGO focused on labor rights in China. Urgent action is needed to ensure decent working conditions and fair wages for all workers producing clothes for Shein. The potential use of child labor, while not explicitly documented in major reports, cannot be entirely disregarded either. The garment industry, particularly in developing countries, has a history of exploiting child labor. While Shein may not directly employ children, the lack of transparency in their huge supply chains raises concerns that child labor might be an issue further down the line. Of course, The fashion giant is seemingly happy to turn blind eye, but the responsibility for ethical production practice ultimately lies with Shein. Shein isn't silent on these issues, and they have been happy to comment on some of the criticism aimed at the company. Shein has responded to allegations of labor exploitations and environmental concerns with the supplier's code of conduct and claims of ongoing improvement efforts. But as Li Qiang says, there's a difference between having a code and enforcing it. The code outlines standards for working hours, wages, and safety standards within their supply chain. However, critics argue that these measures lack teeth and are difficult to enforce, and the reports coming out of Shein's supply chain suggest they're not being enforced at all. The effectiveness of Shein's current effort remains a matter of debate. While they claim to conduct audits and partners with independent verification agencies, reports from NGOs suggest these measures aren't enough. The sheer size and complexity of Shein's supply chain make effective monitoring almost impossible. While we know the whole point of platforms like Shein is fast, affordable, and disposable fashion, and even if there's concerns around the entire fast fashion industry, with Shein there are a lot of reports from customers that the clothing is so cheap that the poor quality make wearing them impossible. The rapid production cycle and the reliance on cheap synthetic materials results in flimsy garments with poor stitchings and construction. These clothes are designed for short lifespans, adding more fuels to the disposable fashion cycle. Beyond the lack of durability, safety concerns have been raised too. Reports from organizations like Greenpeace have documented the presence of harmful chemicals in clothing from fast fashion brands, including Shein. These chemicals, used for waterproofing, flame retardancy, and dyeing, can irritate skin and potentially pose health risks with prolonged exposure. Furthermore, Shein's marketing practices often painted an unrealistic picture of their products. Highly curated photos and videos showcase models in perfectly fitting clothes, neglecting to portray the true quality and fit of the garments that are mass-produced. This disconnect between the online image and the reality can lead to customer dissatisfaction and returns. Customers deserve transparency regarding fabric compositions, fit, potential safety concerns before clicking Add to Cart, but seems sites like Shein don't really see this as a priority. Shein's rapid adoption of the new fleeting trends isn't without critics either. Accusation of cultural appropriation frequently comes to light, with critics point to designs that borrow heavily from specific culture without giving the proper acknowledgement or respect and representation. Some designs have sparked outrage online for being insensitive or offensive. Examples including cultural symbols used inappropriately on clothing or accessories. Shein's marketing also often promotes unrealistically beauty standards, something that the wider fashion industry is trying to improve as quickly as possible. Their heavily edited photos and videos almost always feature models with flawless physiques and skin, adding to the narrow definition of beauty that can hurt self-esteem, particularly for younger consumers, leading to issues like eating disorders, self-harm, and in extreme cases, suicide. Size inclusivity is also a problem. While Shein offers a wider size range compared to some competitors, critics argue their offering often cater more to the trend-friendly body type, neglecting to have a wider spectrum of size. So there we have it. Shein's rise in fast fashion comes with steep cost. The disposable fast fashion model fuels environmental damage. With excessive water usage, textile waste, and the looming threat of microplastic pollution, allegations of unfair labor practices within their supply chain raise serious ethical concerns. With reports of long hours, low wages, and potentially unsafe working conditions, concerns extend beyond productions, with questions about quality, safety hazards, and potentially offensive designs. While Shein has made efforts to address these issues, a lack of transparency and independent monitoring leaves much room for improvement.